Friends, if you want to watch a super entertaining, heartwarming, and absolutely delightful movie like Chef, 2014, in English, then you are definitely in the right place. And if you are visiting our channel for the very first time, make sure to subscribe to our channel, so you don't miss out on more exciting and fun-filled movie breakdowns like this. Friends, in today's video, we are going to talk about a film that is not just about food, but also about passion, family, dreams, and a journey of rediscovery. The name of the film is Chef, 2014. This is not just a regular movie, it's a feel-good adventure that will make you laugh, get you emotional, and most definitely make you hungry. So if you are a fan of movies that mix delicious food with a heartwarming story, then this one is just perfect for you. In today's video, we are going to explore everything about this movie. We will talk about what this film is all about, where you can watch it, and we will dive into some of the most interesting facts and behind-the-scenes details that make this film extra special. I will also tell you on which OTT platform you can watch this film, and if it's available on any satellite channel. We are going to cover every detail from the technical side of the film, including its music department, the soundtracks that give this movie its unique flavor, the pre-production planning, the actual filming journey, and how the post-production team brought this movie to life. Not only that, but we will also talk about the budget of this film, how much it cost to make, and whether it was a box office success or not. We will dig into how audiences around the world responded to this movie, and whether the box office numbers matched the love it received. We will then move into the story of this film, where I will give you a small but fun review of the plot, so you can get a clear idea of what to expect without spoiling all the surprises. Along with this, we will discuss some really fascinating facts about this film that you might not have known before. We will break down the storyline in detail, explore the entire star cast, and take a close look at the performances of the actors. We will see which actor played which character, and how each one brought something special to the screen. From the lead roles to the supporting cast, we will see how perfectly each actor fit into their role, and how their chemistry made the film shine. That's why I request you, friends, to stay with us till the very end of this video because there's so much to discover and enjoy about Chef, 2014. Trust me, you are going to love this journey through the film's making, story, and unforgettable moments. So let's not waste any more time and dive right into the video. The story of Chef, 2014, unfolds in the most flavorful, heartfelt, and entertaining way, starting in the buzzing, high-pressure kitchen of a fancy Los Angeles restaurant where Carl Casper, a gifted but stifled chef, is at the center of it all. Carl's life seems to be running on autopilot. He is an artist trapped in someone else's vision, forced to cook the same safe, predictable dishes under the control of the restaurant's owner, Riva, who is more concerned about pleasing regular customers than allowing Carl's creativity to shine. From the very beginning, you can feel the tension simmering just beneath the surface. Carl is a man with big ideas and a restless passion, but the walls are closing in on him. The spark that sets everything ablaze comes when Ramsey Michel, a well-known and brutally honest food critic, visits the restaurant. Carl desperately wants to impress him by offering a bold new menu, but his boss refuses, insisting on the usual uninspired fare. When the review hits the internet, it is a disaster. Ramsey tears Carl's food apart in a savage critique that spreads like wildfire on social media. This is not just a bad review. It is a public beating that leaves Carl humiliated and furious. What follows is an explosive scene where Carl, in a moment of pure rage and frustration, confronts Ramsey in the restaurant, unaware that the entire meltdown is being filmed by customers and instantly shared online. Carl's furious rant goes viral overnight, and suddenly he becomes an internet joke, his career seemingly destroyed by a few taps on a smartphone. The story cleverly uses social media as a powerful storytelling device, making Twitter and viral videos not just background noise, but active players in Carl's rise and fall. His public image crashes spectacularly, but instead of dragging us through a tale of despair, the movie flips the story into an adventure of rediscovery. After losing his job and realizing he has drifted away from what truly matters, Carl accepts an offer from his ex-wife, Inez, to visit Miami. This is where the real journey begins. In Miami, Inez encourages Carl to get back to his roots by starting a food truck. With the help of Marvin, Inez's ex-husband, Carl gets his hands on a rundown food truck that becomes the blank canvas for his rebirth. Here, the story shifts from a stationary kitchen drama to a vibrant, fast-paced road trip. Carl's trusted friend and former line cook, Martin, joins him, and they hit the road along with Carl's young son, Percy. The food truck, named Emjay, quickly becomes more than just a vehicle for selling Cuban sandwiches. It becomes the heart of the story. Each city they visit, each crowd they serve, each dish they prepare marks a step in Carl's personal and emotional healing. The narrative is not interested in throwing massive obstacles in Carl's path. Instead, it focuses on smaller, everyday challenges like fixing the truck, perfecting recipes, balancing work with fatherhood, and navigating the unpredictable world of street food. These smaller hurdles feel real and relatable, and they make Carl's victories feel earned and satisfying. One of the most delightful threads running through the story is Carl's relationship with Percy. At the beginning, their bond feels distant and awkward, with Carl often too busy or too distracted to spend meaningful time with his son. But as the road trip unfolds, their relationship starts to cook just like the Cuban sandwiches they sell. Percy becomes not just a helper, but an essential partner in Carl's journey. The movie captures the joy of simple moments, a father teaching his son how to make the perfect grilled cheese, the excitement of serving long lines of happy customers, and the quiet pride when Percy's social media skills help the food truck explode in popularity. Social media, which initially destroyed Carl's career, now becomes a surprising hero. Percy's quick thinking and talent for tweeting and posting photos turn Emjay into an online sensation. Crowds begin to follow their truck from city to city, showing how the very platform that broke Carl is now the tool that rebuilds him. The story never plays with complex timelines or confusing structures. It sticks to a linear path, but keeps the journey exciting by balancing moments of humor, delicious food preparation sequences, touching father-son bonding, and vibrant cultural snapshots from different cities. Key turning points are sprinkled throughout the journey. Carl regaining his confidence in his cooking, learning to trust his instincts, finding joy in working with his hands, and most importantly, realizing that his son needs him more than his career ever did. The movie gently layers these emotional beats without hammering them in, letting the story breathe and unfold naturally. The final moments bring everything full circle, with Carl rediscovering not just his passion for food, but also his happiness and his role as a father. The narrative is built like a perfect recipe. It doesn't rush, it doesn't overcomplicate, and it savors every step. It is a story where every small scene adds flavor to the bigger picture. Whether it's a messy kitchen, a crowded street corner in New Orleans, or a quiet moment between a father and his son. The journey is simple, but it is cooked with so much heart, energy, and warmth that every moment feels just right. The characters in Chef, 2014, are crafted with so much care and depth that they feel like real people you could meet on any street corner or in any kitchen, each carrying their own story, struggles, and dreams. Their development isn't just written for the sake of moving the plot forward. It is woven into every small decision, every conversation, and every sizzling moment behind the stove. Each character is like an ingredient in a perfectly balanced dish, each one adding something essential to the overall flavor of the story. At the very heart of this film is Carl Casper, a man whose entire identity has been built around his life as a chef. He's a whirlwind of passion, creativity, and stubbornness. When we meet Carl, he is a man trapped, not by lack of talent, but by a system that forces him to play it safe. He is desperate to break free, to experiment, to cook food that excites him, but the walls of the restaurant, and the control of the owner, are pressing in on him. Carl's early moments are filled with frustration. He's trying to balance his burning desire to be a true artist with the cold reality of what people expect from him. His need for validation from critics like Ramsey Michel drives much of his early choices, but this obsession leaves him blind to the most important parts of his life, his family and his own happiness. Carl's explosion in the restaurant is not just about the bad review. It is the breaking point of years of pent-up emotion. It is raw, it is messy, and it's exactly what makes his character so human. What's brilliant about Carl's character arc is that his transformation doesn't come from outside heroes rescuing him, or some grand twist in the story. His journey is personal, slow, and filled with small moments of realization. When he steps away from the suffocating restaurant scene, and steps into the chaotic, greasy, unpredictable world of running a food truck. Carl begins to rediscover why he fell in love with cooking in the first place. His creativity returns, his passion reignites, but even more importantly, he begins to understand what it means to be present in his son's life. Percy's character is a quiet gem in the story. At first, Percy feels like a background character, the son who patiently waits for his father's attention. He wants time, he wants connection, but Carl is too busy, too caught up in his own whirlwind. As the story unfolds, Percy doesn't just tag along on the food truck journey, he grows into his own. He learns how to clean the truck, how to handle the lines of hungry customers, and most impressively, how to use social media to help his father succeed. Percy's growth is shown through action, not words. He takes initiative, he learns quickly, and he slowly earns his father's admiration. What's beautiful is how Percy's relationship with Carl transforms from one of distance and occasional visits to one of genuine partnership and deep affection. Their growing bond is the emotional heartbeat of the film. The road trip becomes less about selling sandwiches and more about building memories that they never had time to make before. Inez, Carl's ex-wife, could have easily been a flat character in a lesser story, but here, she is layered and essential. She knows Carl better than anyone. She sees his talent, but she also sees his flaws, his pride, his stubbornness, his tunnel vision. Inez doesn't try to control Carl or push him toward some grand comeback. Instead, she quietly opens the right doors, planting the idea of the food truck, encouraging him to find his own way back to happiness. She is the calm in Carl's storm, a steady influence who supports him while still maintaining her own space and identity. Their relationship is not forced into a typical romantic reunion. It is nuanced and real, built on mutual respect, understanding, and shared love for their son. Martin, Carl's loyal best friend and fellow chef, is another highlight. Martin is the guy who doesn't need to be convinced to jump on board the food truck adventure. He shows up, ready to work, ready to help, and ready to chase the dream without hesitation. Martin doesn't go through a huge personal transformation, but his role is vital. He represents the kind of friend everyone hopes to have. Unshakable, reliable, and always there with a joke or a helping hand. He's the one who keeps the truck moving when Carl feels stuck. His energy, his humor, and his genuine care make him one of the film's most lovable characters. Even the secondary characters carry depth and purpose. Riva, the restaurant owner, is not simply a villain. He is a man of habit, focused on running a profitable business and unwilling to take risks. His clash with Carl is not because he wants Carl to fail, but because he fears change. This tension is what forces Carl to walk away and begin his journey. Ramsey Michel, the food critic, appears at first to be Carl's enemy, the man who tore his world apart with one bad review. But the story carefully reveals that Ramsey is not a cruel villain. He simply gave his honest opinion, and ultimately, his review sets Carl on a path that changes his life for the better. In fact, their dynamic shows that sometimes our harshest critics are the ones who unknowingly push us toward growth. What makes the character development in Chef so rich is how naturally it unfolds. The film doesn't rely on over-the-top drama or long emotional speeches. The characters grow through small, meaningful moments. Cooking a sandwich, cleaning the truck together, driving from city to city, serving food with a smile, sharing quiet conversations at the end of a long day. These are the ingredients that slowly shape who they become. Carl learns to put his pride aside, to listen, to be present, to trust his own instincts again. Percy grows into a confident, capable young boy who earns his father's respect and love. Inez stands as the quiet architect of Carl's second chance. And Martin remains the rock-solid friend who never leaves his side. The relationships in this film are what truly drive the story forward. They are messy, funny, complicated, and deeply human. The arcs of the characters are layered like the perfect sandwich. Each piece matters, each layer adds something special, and when combined, they create something that feels warm, satisfying, and real. The performances in Chef, 2014, are like watching a group of friends who forgot the cameras were rolling. The entire cast brings an effortless charm, subtle emotional depth, and a believable energy that pulls the audience into their world without trying too hard. Each actor steps into their role with such natural rhythm that the story feels less like a movie and more like a slice of life served fresh from the kitchen. Jon Favreau, who also directed the film, fully transforms into Carl Casper. His performance is packed with quiet intensity, layers of frustration, bursts of humor, and moments of raw vulnerability that feel incredibly genuine. Favreau doesn't play Carl like a larger-than-life hero. Instead, he makes him feel like a regular guy, a dad, a cook, a man trying to figure things out. His portrayal of Carl's professional collapse and personal rediscovery is so grounded that you can feel the weight of every bad decision, every missed opportunity, and every step he takes toward rebuilding his life. Favreau brings a physical presence to the role that goes beyond acting. The way he handles knives, flips pans, and prepares food feels so authentic that it seems like he actually spent years perfecting the craft. His performance is full of small details that bring Carl to life. The frustration in his eyes when his creativity is stifled, the tenderness in his voice when he begins to reconnect with his son, and the nervous energy he carries when stepping into the unknown world of the food truck. Favreau's quiet, steady approach allows the audience to fully believe in Carl's journey. Emjay, playing Carl's son Percy, delivers a performance that's refreshingly honest and free from the usual overpolished style of child actors. Percy feels like a real kid who just wants to spend more time with his dad, not a scripted sidekick written for cute moments. Emjay gives Percy a perfect balance of curiosity, excitement, and gentle sadness. His quiet disappointment in the beginning, when Carl keeps breaking promises, is played with subtlety and restraint. Emjay's ability to carry emotional weight in the smallest gestures, like glancing down when Carl rushes off, or lighting up when Carl finally includes him, gives their relationship real texture. As the story progresses, Emjay makes Percy's growth feel natural. His confidence builds, his skills sharpen, and his joy in working alongside his father beams through the screen. The chemistry between Favreau and Emjay is so authentic that their father-son bond feels lived in and real. Jon Leguizamo as Martin is pure energy. He brings humor, loyalty, and an unstoppable enthusiasm that never feels forced. Leguizamo doesn't just play the funny sidekick. He brings heart to the role. He's the friend who shows up when Carl hits rock bottom. And he sticks around not because he has to, but because he believes in Carl and shares his passion for cooking. Leguizamo's timing is flawless. He knows when to crack a joke to lift a scene, and when to lean into the quiet, supportive moments that make their friendship so strong. His presence in the food truck is electric. The way he jumps into the work, tackles every challenge with a smile, and encourages Carl to enjoy the ride makes his performance one of the film's highlights. Sofia Vergara as Inez surprises with a performance that feels gentle, layered, and completely sincere. Known for her comedic roles with big energy, here she dials it back and delivers something beautifully understated. Inez is not a stereotypical ex-wife or a romantic subplot. Vergara plays her with quiet strength and a steady patience. She isn't pushing Carl to change, but she's giving him the space and the encouragement to figure things out on his own. In her scenes with Favreau, there's a lovely sense of familiarity and mutual respect. Vergara's calm, knowing expressions and her soft yet firm advice add real emotional weight to Carl's journey. She never steals the spotlight, but her presence lingers as one of the film's emotional anchors. Scarlett Johansson's performance as Molly, Carl's friend and restaurant hostess, is subtle but impactful. Johansson doesn't have a large role, but she fills every moment she has with quiet warmth. She plays Molly with a natural ease, steering clear of forced drama or artificial tension. Johansson's strength is in how much she can say with just a glance or a few words. Her scenes with Favreau show a genuine, supportive friendship. She encourages Carl to be true to himself, but she never pushes him aggressively. There's a softness in her performance that adds a small but important layer to Carl's support system. Dustin Hoffman as Riva, the rigid restaurant owner, delivers a controlled performance that feels real. Hoffman gives Riva just the right touch of sternness without turning him into a cartoon villain. He's a man of habit, protective of his business, and afraid of losing what works. Hoffman's delivery is sharp, his timing crisp, and his ability to make even a simple disagreement feel heavy is a testament to his experience. He's the perfect roadblock for Carl's growth, a man stuck in his ways, forcing Carl to finally break free. Robert Downey Jr.'s brief but unforgettable appearance as Marvin, Inez's eccentric ex-husband, is a burst of unpredictable fun. Downey Jr. brings his signature charm, quick delivery, and slightly manic energy to the role, instantly grabbing attention. His performance adds a spark to the early part of Carl's journey. Even though he's only in the film for a few minutes, he makes those moments unforgettable with his rapid-fire dialogue and quirky, over-the-top persona. What's beautiful about the performances in Chef is that no one is trying to outshine the others. The entire cast plays like an ensemble, with each actor understanding their place in the story's rhythm. The chemistry between them is what gives the film its magic. Carl's bond with Percy feels authentic, because Favreau and Emjay share a natural warmth. Carl's friendship with Martin feels lived in because Favreau and Leguizamo bounce off each other with perfect timing. Inez's calm support feels honest because Vergara never overreaches. Even the supporting roles with actors like Hoffman, Johansson, and Downey Jr. never feel like distractions. They all bring something important to Carl's world. The performances don't chase big, showy moments. They build the story through the smallest, most human details. A look, a laugh, a quiet conversation in the food truck after a long day. This is where the film's heart lives, in those tiny beats where the characters are just being themselves. Every actor brings their role to life with authenticity, restraint, and just the right amount of flavor to make the entire story feel like something that could be unfolding in the next town over. The magic of the performances is that they invite the audience in, make them feel welcome, and keep them happily riding along on the journey from the first sizzle of the grill to the final, heartfelt moment. Jon Favreau's direction in Chef 2014 is the secret ingredient that holds the entire film together, shaping the tone, mood, and storytelling with a light but deliberate touch. His approach feels almost like the careful preparation of a complex dish. He knows exactly when to let the flavors build slowly, when to turn up the heat, and when to let the story rest just long enough to absorb every ounce of emotion. Favreau doesn't push the story along with flashy camera tricks or forced intensity. Instead, he creates a world that feels completely lived in, where the story flows as naturally as a conversation between friends, and the mood wraps around the audience like the comforting aroma of something cooking in the kitchen. From the very first frame, Favreau establishes a tone that is equal parts playful, heartfelt, and deeply human. He invites the audience to step inside Carl Casper's life, not as spectators watching from a distance, but as companions on a journey. The mood is never exaggerated. Even when Carl's life starts to unravel, Favreau resists the temptation to overdramatize the situation. The story doesn't fall into the trap of making Carl's failures feel like the end of the world. Instead, it feels personal and honest, like watching a friend stumble, pick themselves up, and slowly rebuild with their own two hands. Favreau's steady hand behind the camera makes the emotional moments hit even harder because they are never forced. They simply unfold with the gentle pace of real life. His stylistic choices are one of the most delicious parts of the film. Favreau puts food at the very center of the visual experience. He shoots every cooking sequence with incredible detail, using close-up shots that don't just show food, they celebrate it. The sizzling of meat, the careful layering of a Cuban sandwich, the soft crackle of bread being grilled. Favreau captures these moments with a kind of reverence. The camera lingers, allowing the audience to feel the texture, hear the sound, and almost taste the flavors coming to life on screen. It's not just about making the food look good. It's about showing Carl's connection to his craft, about turning cooking into a visual love language. These scenes are filmed with so much patience and precision that they become a character in themselves, pulling the audience deeper into Carl's world. The pacing is masterfully handled. Favreau gives the story time to breathe. He never rushes the transformation of Carl Casper, or forces the road trip into a series of exaggerated plot points. The journey unfolds with a rhythm that feels entirely natural. The beginning carries a tighter, more controlled pace as Carl struggles within the stiff, confined world of the restaurant. But once Carl steps out into the freedom of the food truck, the pacing loosens up beautifully. The film takes its time showing Carl bonding with his son, discovering joy in his work, and slowly peeling back his pride. The road trip flows like a perfectly timed song, upbeat, joyful, but with soft, reflective pauses that make the ride feel rich and satisfying. Favreau instinctively knows when to let the story sit in the quiet, simple moments. A father teaching his son to cook, a friend sharing a laugh over a long day's work, a silent drive as the sun sets. These moments give the story its real weight. His shot composition also evolves alongside Carl's emotional journey. In the early scenes, the camera is often trapped in tight frames, boxed into the sleek, high-end kitchen with its shiny countertops and rigid, structured layouts. Carl feels stuck, and so do the visuals. The world feels controlled, almost sterile. But as soon as Carl leaves that life behind, the camera opens up. The shots become wider, the natural light floods in, the spaces breathe. The open roads, the food truck windows, the buzzing street corners. All of these are captured with a sense of freedom and possibility. Favreau's visual storytelling allows the audience to feel Carl's emotional release, the gradual shedding of his frustration, and the return of his passion. Favreau's understanding of modern culture also shines in how he weaves social media into the story without making it feel like a gimmick. Tweets, viral videos, and online buzz are presented in a playful, energetic way that feels both timely and completely natural within Carl's world. Social media becomes more than just a background noise. It becomes an essential part of Carl's rise, fall, and reinvention. Favreau makes the audience feel the speed and excitement of digital virality, without letting it overpower the personal heart of the story. He shows how quickly news spreads, how the smallest moments can become public spectacles, and how Carl's redemption is built not just on delicious food, but on his ability to reconnect with people directly through his food and his story. The music selection is another layer where Favreau's direction shines. He packs the film with an irresistible soundtrack that pulses with energy and joy. The music isn't just filler, it drives the emotion of entire scenes. Whether it's the salsa rhythms in Miami, the brass-heavy sounds of New Orleans, or the playful tracks that accompany the food truck montages, every musical choice feels alive. The way Favreau syncs the rhythm of cooking with the beats of the soundtrack turns ordinary food preparation into exhilarating, cinematic moments. These music-driven sequences are some of the film's most joyful highlights, transforming the food truck's daily grind into a vibrant celebration. Favreau's direction also shows remarkable restraint when it comes to handling his cast. He gives his actors room to breathe, trusting their performances to carry the weight of each scene. The chemistry between the cast feels completely unforced. The conversations between Carl, Percy, Martin, and Inez don't feel like rehearsed dialogue. They feel like natural, everyday exchanges. Favreau lets the pauses linger, allows the overlapping banter to flow, and resists the urge to pack the film with artificial emotional climaxes. The real magic comes in the small, spontaneous moments. The way Carl and Percy laugh over a sandwich, the way Martin cheers Carl up with an inside joke, the way Inez quietly encourages Carl without ever needing to make a grand speech. Favreau's direction is all about giving space for these authentic connections to grow. Every element of his vision, from the way the camera captures the vibrant colors of food to the way the pacing mirrors Carl's emotional journey, works together to create a film that feels cohesive, warm, and endlessly watchable. Favreau's storytelling is like slow cooking. It's patient, deliberate, and deeply satisfying. He creates a world where food isn't just something people eat. It's something they live for, something that brings them together, something that heals what's broken. The direction makes every bite of the story feel like comfort food served straight from the heart. The cinematography in Chef 2014 isn't just a visual companion to the story, it's a sensory experience, a visual language that speaks to the audience in every frame, every slice, and every sizzling moment. The camera doesn't just observe the characters. It celebrates their journey, their passion, and most of all, their connection to food. It's as if the cinematography is not content with simply showing what happens. It wants you to taste, smell, and feel it. The most remarkable aspect is how the camera treats food with the same level of attention as it gives to the characters. The close-up shots of cooking are not thrown in as filler. They are detailed, intimate, and often shot with the patience usually reserved for romantic moments. The way the camera lingers on the careful layering of a Cuban sandwich, the slow melting of cheese on a hot grill, or the delicate sprinkling of spices is intentional and deeply satisfying. You can hear the crisp crunch as Carl slices through freshly toasted bread. You can see the glistening oil as meat sears, and you can almost smell the rich flavors through the screen. These cooking sequences are filmed with a passion that turns them into more than just preparation scenes. They become moments of artistry. The camera angles get close, really close, but they're never chaotic. There's a steady calm in the way the cinematographer captures these moments, letting the audience sink into the rhythm of cooking without ever rushing the process. The use of camera angles throughout the film tells a quiet but important story. In the beginning, when Carl feels trapped in his job at the restaurant, the cinematography tightens around him. The shots are more compressed, the camera stays in static, almost boxy frames that visually trap Carl in his polished but stifling environment. The angles reinforce the feeling of pressure and restriction. You can sense the weight of expectations just by the way the camera frames him against the sleek, sterile walls of the kitchen. There's a rigidity to these shots, a sense that Carl's creativity has nowhere to go. The lighting in these early scenes also plays into this theme. It's cold, sharp, and clinical, as if the joy has been drained from his cooking. But when Carl takes to the road and steps into his food truck, the cinematography transforms. The camera begins to stretch its legs. The shots open up, the angles loosen, and the visuals breathe. The use of wider lenses and open framing makes the world feel bigger, warmer, and full of possibility. The lighting softens, sunlight streams through the food truck windows, and the golden hours of the day are captured with a loving, warm glow. This shift is not subtle. It is a complete visual rebirth that mirrors Carl's emotional transformation. The cinematography begins to soak in the vibrancy of the streets, the playful colors of the cities they visit, and the electric energy of the crowds. The street scenes burst with life. In Miami, the camera dances through bright murals, open-air markets, and sun-drenched avenues. In New Orleans, the shots hum with the rhythm of street musicians, the bounce of brass bands, and the buzz of people moving in sync with the music. There's a brilliant playfulness in how the cinematographer captures the fast-paced energy of the food truck scenes. The camera becomes a moving participant in the truck's chaotic dance. It weaves around Martin as he preps ingredients. It follows Percy as he expertly manages the growing lines of customers. And it glides behind Carl as he commands the small space with newfound joy. The handheld shots bring intimacy and immediacy, but they are controlled and steady, never dizzying or aggressive. This careful movement makes the audience feel like they are physically inside the truck, part of the crew, caught up in the momentum of cooking and serving. The social media elements of the story are cleverly folded into the cinematography without becoming jarring or out of place. Tweets and posts pop up in playful, floating graphics that feel like they naturally belong in Carl's world. The cinematographer integrates these moments with fluidity, letting them dance across the screen in sync with the rhythm of the story. Social media becomes part of the visual landscape, not just an overlay, and it helps keep the energy light and modern without pulling focus from the heart of the story. Lighting continues to evolve with Carl's emotional arc. In the food truck, the lighting is consistently warm, full of natural sunlight and soft glows from streetlights and kitchen bulbs. These warm tones bring comfort and joy to the visuals, enhancing the feeling that Carl is finally cooking from his heart. Even nighttime scenes carry a cozy, intimate vibe, with gentle low lighting that wraps the characters in soft shadows, creating a sense of closeness and ease. The cinematography also captures the growing bond between Carl and Percy with an incredible tenderness. At the beginning, they are often framed with distance between them, Carl absorbed in his work while Percy stands just outside the shot, looking in. But as their relationship strengthens, the camera brings them closer together, framing them side by side as true partners. There are beautiful, quiet shots where they are working in sync, preparing sandwiches, wiping counters, and laughing together, all captured with a subtle, unspoken intimacy. The framing carefully follows this emotional progression, gently pulling Carl and Percy into the same space, visually showing their reconnection long before the dialogue spells it out. There are unforgettable visual moments sprinkled throughout the film. The grilled cheese sandwich sequence stands out as a miniature masterpiece. It's a slow, hypnotic dance of butter, cheese, and bread, framed so lovingly that it feels like watching someone rediscover their purpose. The montage of the food truck's road trip is another visual high point, filled with quick, joyful cuts of cooking, traveling, and celebrating, perfectly synced with the infectious soundtrack. These moments hum with life and flavor, made richer by the cinematography's careful balance between close-up intimacy and wide-open freedom. The camera never intrudes. It observes, it celebrates, and it guides the audience through Carl's emotional and creative journey with a steady, thoughtful eye. It knows when to stay still and let a tender moment unfold, and it knows when to move with the pulse of a busy food truck or a lively city street. The cinematography in Chef builds a world that feels tangible, where every color, every cut, and every beam of sunlight is carefully chosen to draw the audience closer, to make them feel like they're not just watching Carl's story, they're living it. The editing and pacing in Chef, 2014, work with the precision of a well-rehearsed kitchen, where every chop, stir, and flame is perfectly timed, yet it all feels effortless. The film flows with a natural rhythm that doesn't just push the story forward. It invites the audience to live inside each moment. The editing isn't just about moving from one scene to another. It's about creating an experience where time seems to stretch when needed, race when excitement builds, and glide smoothly when life unfolds in its gentle, everyday pace. At the beginning of the film, when Carl is stuck in the suffocating world of the high-end restaurant, the editing is intentionally tight and controlled. Scenes move quickly, conversations are cut with a briskness that leaves no room for Carl to pause or reflect. The shots come in fast, clean cuts that echo the mechanical routine Carl has fallen into. The editing here isn't just technical, it's emotional. It makes the audience feel Carl's restlessness and the unspoken pressure weighing him down. There's an almost rhythmic repetition to these early moments, like Carl's life is on a loop, boxed in by the expectations of his job, his boss, and his critics. The pacing creates this visual hum of routine where everything feels a little too precise, a little too sharp, and just on the edge of snapping. Then comes the meltdown, the explosion that sends Carl's life off its rigid track. And this is where the editing takes a brilliant turn. The flow of the film begins to loosen up, just as Carl's life does. When Carl walks away from the restaurant, the film lets go of the tight structure and starts to stretch out, breathe, and move with a different tempo. The cuts get softer, the transitions more fluid, and the pacing eases into a rhythm that feels almost like a heartbeat slowing down after a long sprint. The editing beautifully mirrors Carl's emotional release. It's as if the film has been waiting to exhale, and now it finally can. When Carl hits the road with the food truck, the pacing truly comes alive. The editing finds this perfect middle ground where the story never drags, but it also never rushes past the good stuff. The road trip unfolds with a steady, confident beat, taking the time to explore each city, each cooking session, each growing moment between Carl and his son. The editors understand that the joy of this film isn't in racing toward an ending. It's in the journey itself. The way the food truck's travels are stitched together shows this so clearly. In Miami, the cuts are energetic but not chaotic, letting the viewer feel the pulse of the streets and the heat of the grill. In New Orleans, the editing slows just enough to soak in the vibrant music and the joy of the crowd. In Austin, the pace picks up again, catching the excitement of the buzzing food scene. The editing carries this balance, shifting gears with each location, but always staying locked into the natural flow of Carl's journey. The montage sequences are a brilliant example of the editing skill. These moments, especially the food preparation montages and the food truck's rise to local fame, are cut with infectious energy. The quick, rhythmic cuts between sizzling meats, toasting bread, smiling customers, and the clatter of kitchen tools build an irresistible momentum. The editors time these scenes perfectly to the music, making each slice, press, and flip of a sandwich feel like a beat in a song. These montages are not just visually exciting, they're like celebrations, moments where the film's energy lifts and carries the audience along for the ride. But even in these faster sequences, the editing never loses clarity. The film always gives enough breathing room to appreciate what's being shown, whether it's the perfection of a Cuban sandwich or the growing line of hungry fans. The transitions between high-energy montages and quieter, more emotional scenes are handled with a smoothness that keeps the story's emotional core intact. The editing knows when to let the camera linger on Carl's face as he shares a quiet moment with Percy, when to give space for a heartfelt conversation, and when to jump back into the heat of a busy service rush. This balance between fast and slow is what makes the pacing feel so alive. It's not one constant tempo. It's a living rhythm that moves in step with Carl's ups and downs, his frustrations, his joy, and his rediscovery of passion. One of the most impressive things about the film's editing is how it allows silence to have weight. In moments where Carl is alone, thinking, or simply cooking for himself, the pacing slows to let those silences speak. The editors resist the urge to cut away too quickly. They let those moments settle. And in doing so, they give the audience the chance to feel what Carl is feeling. Whether it's the simple joy of making a grilled cheese sandwich with Percy or the quiet satisfaction of serving a perfect meal to a customer, these small moments are given time to unfold, making them just as important as the bigger story beats. The film also integrates social media in a way that feels completely natural, thanks to the snappy, well-timed editing. Tweets, videos, and online reactions slide seamlessly into the visual flow, becoming part of the film's storytelling rhythm without ever feeling like a forced insert. The pace at which Carl's online fame builds is perfectly timed. It's fast enough to feel viral, but paced well enough to let the audience enjoy watching it unfold. The way the editing handles these social media moments keeps the story modern and relevant while maintaining the personal, character-driven heartbeat of the film. What makes the pacing truly special is that it never feels mechanical. It feels like a road trip with good friends, where sometimes you speed down the highway with music blasting, and sometimes you pull over to watch the sunset. The editors have a clear sense of where to pick up the tempo and where to coast, creating a story rhythm that feels playful, warm, and completely in tune with the characters. There are no wasted scenes. Every moment feels like it belongs, and every cut serves the emotional flow of the film. Even when the story takes time to focus on small, quiet details, like Carl teaching Percy how to use tongs properly or Martin cracking a joke over a busy lunch shift, the pacing never drags because those details are what give the story its heart. The editing is confident enough to let joy linger and quick enough to keep the audience engaged, always making sure the story moves with purpose, but never at the expense of character development or emotional payoff. The rhythm of the film is what makes it feel so genuine. It knows life isn't one long sprint. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow, but the magic is in the mix, and the editors of Chef serve that mix with precision, warmth, and perfect timing. The soundtrack and score in Chef, 2014, don't just sit comfortably alongside the story. They drive it, shape it, and flavor it in a way that turns the entire film into one continuous, living playlist. The music choices in this film aren't random. They are selected with pinpoint precision to match the heartbeat of each scene, each emotional beat, and each turning point in Carl Casper's journey. It's a film where the music practically becomes a traveling companion, sitting in the front seat of the food truck, dancing through the street crowds, and sizzling right along with the food on the grill. Right from the opening scenes, the soundtrack sets the tone of the film's world. It's a world buzzing with energy, pulsing with cultural vibrancy, and dripping with flavor. The songs are steeped in rich, diverse rhythms: Latin jazz, salsa, New Orleans brass, Southern blues, and smooth funk. The music never feels tacked on or used to fill empty space. It's like the film is infused with the sounds of each place Carl travels to. The soundtrack is a living, breathing roadmap that helps the audience feel the texture of every city. In Miami, the beats hit fast and hot, with fiery salsa rhythms and rapid percussion that perfectly capture the intensity and vibrancy of the streets. The music jumps in with the scent of Cuban sandwiches in the air and the heat of a busy kitchen, immediately throwing the audience into the buzzing pulse of Carl's starting point. When Carl heads to New Orleans, the film doesn't just tell you where you are, it sings it to you. The brassy, foot-tapping energy of the local street musicians pours into the scenes with such raw, street-level authenticity that the soundtrack practically becomes part of the city itself. The music isn't layered over these moments. It's happening in real time, in the middle of the streets, alive in the hands of the performers Carl passes. The editing and the sound design know exactly how to weave these live sounds into the film's rhythm. So instead of pausing for a musical interlude, the movie flows directly into these beats. The audience feels the sweat, the speed, and the celebration of the moment as if they're standing right there on the sidewalk. The Austin sequences bring another musical pivot. The soundtrack picks up with a more relaxed, funky groove, perfectly matching the city's creative, indie vibe. The laid-back beats match Carl's growing sense of freedom and confidence, and this musical shift feels completely earned. Like Carl's soundtrack is evolving with him as he finds joy in his food, his work, and his connection to his son. These carefully selected tracks make the road trip feel like a fully immersive, city-hopping journey where each destination has its own flavor, not just on the plate but through the speakers. The soundtrack's biggest triumph is how effortlessly it locks in with the film's pacing. The montages are pure magic. The scenes of sizzling pork, buttered bread, and juicy sandwiches being pressed on the grill are cut so tightly to the beat of the music that they almost feel choreographed. The timing is flawless. Every flip of a sandwich, every slice of a knife, every quick move in the food truck's crowded kitchen hits the rhythm like a perfectly rehearsed routine. The audience doesn't just watch these sequences, they feel them. The music doesn't step in as a background filler. It steps in as a partner, guiding the tempo of each cut and giving the film an irresistible forward momentum. What's especially clever is how the soundtrack becomes a narrative device. The music isn't just there to make scenes sound good. It actually tells the story. The shift in musical styles directly mirrors Carl's personal transformation. The uptight, sterile environment of the restaurant has no music. It's quiet, clinical, and suffocating. But when Carl steps out on his own, the music explodes into the film like a breath of fresh air. The soundtrack becomes louder, richer, and freer, and it mirrors the way Carl rediscovers his passion and joy. The music grows louder as Carl's spirit does, and the choice to let that connection between music and character development guide the story is what gives Chef such a satisfying rhythm. There are also moments where silence plays a role, and this is where the sound design shows incredible restraint. When Carl is cooking alone, especially during his quieter, more reflective scenes, the soundtrack falls away, leaving only the sounds of the kitchen, the hiss of a pan, the crisping of bread, the soft scrape of a knife. The film knows when to let the music fade and let the natural sounds of cooking take center stage. These silent moments are not empty. They're filled with Carl's concentration, his care, and his love for what he's creating. The absence of music here gives these scenes a tender weight. The audience isn't pushed to feel something by a swelling score. Instead, they are invited to just be present, to appreciate the rhythm of the kitchen, and to understand that, in those quiet moments, Carl is completely at peace. Social media is also folded neatly into the soundscape. Notifications, tweets, and viral moments come with quick, sharp sound effects that are light and playful, enhancing the modern, fast-moving feel of the digital side of Carl's journey. The sound cues for these moments are perfectly timed, adding little pops of humor and energy without ever feeling intrusive or gimmicky. They're part of the world, just like the street music and the clinking of kitchen utensils. Throughout the film, the soundtrack keeps circling back to Latin influences, using recurring styles that act almost like a musical motif for Carl's freedom and creativity. These sounds, especially the Cuban beats, become part of Carl's identity, his emotional compass, and his connection to his roots. The recurrence of these sounds isn't overtly signposted, but their reappearance throughout the film gives the audience a familiar, comforting thread to follow, a kind of musical home base. The music also supports Carl's relationship with his son, Percy. Many of their bonding scenes are wrapped in playful, light-hearted tracks that underscore their growing closeness. The soundtracks for their moments together aren't overly sweet or sentimental. They're just fun, warm, and filled with life, which makes their connection feel natural and earned. The genius of the soundtrack is that it knows when to take the lead and when to step back. It never tries to dominate the emotional beats, it complements them. The film's energy doesn't come from swelling violins or grand cinematic compositions. It comes from the pure, unfiltered joy of the music itself. It comes from the realness of street bands, the groove of Cuban rhythms, the pulse of New Orleans jazz, and the bounce of Austin funk. The soundtrack captures the raw, messy, delicious beauty of Carl's journey and makes it feel like a living playlist you'd want to take on your own road trip. The music sticks with you long after the story ends, not just because the songs are catchy, but because they are sewn so tightly into the memory of the film. Each track carries the flavor of the cities Carl visited, the food he cooked, the people he connected with, and the freedom he finally claimed for himself. The soundtrack is more than just a background. It's the flavor, the spice, the heartbeat, and the soul of Chef, and it keeps sizzling long after the last scene fades. Chef 2014 is a film that quietly overflows with layered, heartfelt themes, all delicately folded into a story that never needs to lecture its audience. It's a film that speaks through the rhythm of daily life, through sizzling food, and through the messy, beautiful journey of a man trying to rediscover himself. The deeper messages aren't written in bold capital letters. They simmer in the background, surfacing naturally as the story rolls forward like Carl Casper's food truck down an open highway. What makes these themes stick isn't just that they are universally relatable. It's that they are served in such a genuine, unforced way that they feel like part of life itself. The film's most powerful theme is the rediscovery of passion. Carl begins as a man who has lost his way, caught in a system that stifles his creativity. His love for cooking, once fiery and alive, has turned into a mechanical job where he is no longer allowed to express himself. The restaurant isn't just a building. It's a symbol of creative suffocation, a place where art is reduced to routine, where risks are forbidden, and where the spark of originality is slowly snuffed out. This is the universal struggle many people face when doing something they love becomes trapped under the weight of expectations, rules, and the pressure to please others. The film captures that delicate, painful moment when someone realizes they're still technically doing what they love, but without love. Carl's journey is about breaking out of that confinement, and the film beautifully communicates that the path to reigniting passion isn't always about chasing bigger dreams. Sometimes it's about scaling down, simplifying, and stripping away all the unnecessary layers until only the core joy remains. The food truck represents this perfectly. It's small, it's mobile, and it's completely Carl's. It isn't glamorous. There's no white tablecloth, no Michelin star, no critic breathing down his neck. But there's freedom. And in that freedom, Carl finds not only his creativity, but also his happiness. The film's message about how success is not always about prestige but about personal fulfillment hits home without needing to spell it out. It shows how sometimes, the best version of ourselves emerges not when we're climbing the biggest ladder, but when we're cooking the simplest sandwich with love. Fatherhood is another theme that runs deep in Chef. Carl's relationship with Percy is one of slow repair and quiet revelation. Carl isn't absent because he doesn't care. He's absent because he's been swallowed by his own frustration and self-doubt. The film explores the sometimes uncomfortable truth that good people can still neglect the people who love them most, simply by being too consumed by their own battles. Percy, on the other hand, doesn't need grand gestures. What he craves is his father's attention, his time, and his trust. The food truck journey becomes their bridge, not because Carl suddenly decides to be a great dad, but because the truck naturally gives them the space to work together, laugh together, and share their lives in a way they never did before. The story captures the beauty of parenting through action, through teaching, and through showing up consistently, rather than trying to repair years of distance with one big apology. One of the most refreshing aspects of the film is that it doesn't manufacture unnecessary drama to prove its points. The reconnection between Carl and Percy happens slowly, through real moments, through learning how to use social media, through cleaning the food truck, through late-night grilled cheese lessons. The film gently suggests that love, whether it's for a craft or for family, is built in the quiet, everyday acts that often get overlooked. Another important theme is the delicate balance between ego and humility. Carl is undeniably passionate, but his pride sometimes blinds him. His public meltdown isn't just a reaction to a bad review. It's the eruption of years of bottled frustration, creative suppression, and bruised self-esteem. The film doesn't judge him for this explosion, but it does show that real growth happens when Carl humbles himself. His journey is not about proving the critic wrong. It's about learning to let go of the need for validation from the wrong people. Carl's evolution shows that true satisfaction comes not from crushing your enemies or winning internet battles, but from standing in your food truck, cooking what you love, and serving it with joy to the people who truly appreciate it. The film also touches on the strange, sometimes chaotic role of social media in shaping modern identity. Carl's entire journey is kick-started by a viral disaster on Twitter, and it's fascinating how quickly the story unfolds in the online space. The film doesn't frame social media as either good or evil, it shows both sides. Social media has the power to destroy Carl's professional image in a flash, but it also becomes the vehicle for his ultimate success, spreading the word about his food truck like wildfire. It's a smart commentary on how, in today's world, anyone's story can be rewritten in a matter of hours, and it cleverly uses Percy's growing involvement as a reminder that the digital world is something the younger generation naturally navigates. The way Carl eventually embraces this tool, with Percy as his guide, feels like a modern, realistic acknowledgement that sometimes the people we think we're teaching are actually the ones leading us into new worlds. Freedom and ownership are recurring themes that echo through every part of the story. When Carl is working under his old boss, he doesn't own his space, his menu, or his choices. The minute he steps into the food truck, everything changes. Every sandwich, every ingredient, every decision belongs to him. The film repeatedly drives home this message without spelling it out. The simple act of owning your work, standing by it, and sharing it with pride can be life-changing. There's also an understated message about the value of second chances. Carl doesn't burn bridges forever. His relationship with his ex-wife remains warm, and his fallout with the food critic eventually circles back in an unexpected way. The film suggests that life doesn't always have to be about final victories or bitter defeats. Sometimes, second chances are waiting on the other side of failure, but you have to walk through the hard part first to find them. Even the way the film treats success is refreshingly honest. It isn't painted as a single, glittering moment of triumph. Instead, success is found in small, cumulative victories. Connecting with Percy, making a customer smile, seeing a line form outside the truck, feeling proud of your work again. The film's message quietly lands. The journey itself is the reward. The process, the growth, and the shared moments are what truly matter. Chef explores these themes with such natural storytelling that they sneak into the viewer's heart without ever feeling pushed. The movie never tells the audience what to think. It invites them to watch, to feel, and to draw their own conclusions. The deeper messages linger like the smell of roasted pork and fresh bread. They stay with you long after the credits roll, warm, comforting, and full of life. The film doesn't need grand declarations or complex metaphors to leave a lasting impression. It simply shows us life, messy, funny, painful, delicious. And in doing so, it quietly delivers some of the most genuine themes about family, passion, creativity, and freedom you'll ever taste. In Chef 2014, the approach to visual effects in CGI is not about creating spectacle. It's about creating texture, atmosphere, and authenticity that make the viewer feel as if they are right there, inches from the sizzling grill, smelling the spices, hearing the crunch, and almost tasting the food. The film doesn't lean on big-budget digital effects or mind-bending CGI to grab attention because the story itself lives in the small, tactile moments of everyday life. But what's truly fascinating is how the film uses subtle, clever, almost invisible visual effects to deepen the storytelling and keep the energy flowing without ever pulling the audience out of the world. The most noticeable digital touches in Chef come from the visual representation of social media, which is seamlessly woven into the fabric of the film. Twitter is not just something the characters talk about, it visually dances across the screen. Tweets pop up next to characters as they send them, mentions float in the air, and viral videos play out in miniature screens right next to the food truck windows. These moments are not treated as heavy visual gimmicks. They are presented lightly, almost playfully, as part of the real-time experience of Carl's story. The clean, crisp social media graphics blend perfectly with the film's naturalistic style. They keep the pacing brisk and the storytelling visually engaging, especially when the tempo picks up as Carl's story goes viral. The way these digital elements are introduced feels so organic that they never feel like separate layers. They are stitched into the flow of the scenes, helping to tell the story in a way that feels modern and accessible without ever overwhelming the simplicity of the film's world. Where the film really shines visually, though, is in its relentless commitment to practical effects. The food in Chef is the true visual centerpiece, and it is treated with the same care and reverence that some films reserve for grand battle scenes or stunning CGI landscapes. Every sandwich, every sizzling slice of pork, every golden grilled cheese is cooked, assembled, and filmed in real time with no digital gloss layered on top. The food is not artificially enhanced with computer-generated steam or fake grill marks. It is shot as it is, in all its messy, delicious glory. And this is exactly what makes it so visually irresistible. The way the camera lingers on the preparation process, catching the sheen of oil, the crispness of bread, the melting of cheese, creates an intimacy that no CGI could ever replicate. The cinematography and practical filming of food preparation almost serve as a form of visual effects themselves because the shots are composed with such precision that each moment feels amplified. The sizzling, the slicing, the soft plop of meat onto bread. These are captured with perfect clarity and rhythm, turning everyday cooking into a visual performance. These practical effects pull the audience into the sensory world of the kitchen. You can almost feel the heat of the grill and the weight of the knives. The hands-on, physical preparation of food is shot with such loving detail that it becomes the most captivating visual effect the film has to offer. It's a celebration of texture, color, and sound that no digital trickery could improve. The food truck, which is the heart of Carl's journey, is another carefully constructed practical space that doesn't rely on visual enhancements. The interior is small, tight, and packed with real, working kitchen equipment. The sweat on the characters' faces, the steam rising from the grill, the grease-smeared countertops. These elements give the scenes their texture and authenticity. The claustrophobic, high-energy environment of the truck is captured through practical shooting angles and natural lighting, giving the audience a first-hand experience of the hustle and pressure without a single pixel of CGI manipulation. You feel the pace, the tight choreography, the urgency of the lunch rush. The truck feels alive, not because it's dressed up with effects, but because it's allowed to be real, messy, and tactile. Even the cities Carl travels through, Miami, New Orleans, Austin, are presented in their natural, unaltered beauty. There's no digital enhancement to make the streets look busier, or the skylines more impressive. The vibrancy comes from real street scenes, from live bands, from natural lighting pouring onto sun-soaked sidewalks. The film trusts the charm of these cities to shine on their own, and the decision to let the raw details stand untouched gives the film an earthy, grounded visual identity. There's something genuinely refreshing about the way the film allows Miami's colorful buildings, New Orleans' buzzing streets, and Austin's quirky, creative corners to speak for themselves, instead of dressing them up with unnecessary visual flourishes. What's particularly interesting is the film's use of subtle visual rhythm to create energy, where other films might rely on fast-paced editing or loud digital overlays. In Chef, the visual momentum comes from the seamless combination of practical cooking shots, quick cutting, and real-time social media reactions. The visual flow is built carefully, using natural actions, the flipping of a sandwich, the wiping of a counter, the hands exchanging food through the truck window, all captured in crisp, rhythmic sequences that keep the eye engaged without needing flashy effects. The moments when social media truly takes over Carl's life, when his Twitter fight with the critic explodes or when videos of the food truck spread rapidly across the internet, are handled with just enough digital flair to feel current, but they never tip over into distraction. The visual effects here are used as tools to move the story forward, not as decorations to show off. The simplicity of how tweets float by, or how phone screens light up feels purposeful and clean, always enhancing the scene without pulling the focus away from the human emotions underneath. What makes the visual approach so effective is its restraint. Chef knows exactly when to let the food, the faces, and the cities carry the weight of the scene, and when to let modern digital touches quietly step in to keep the audience aware of the story's contemporary edge. The balance between practical and digital is finely tuned, and this harmony gives the film its unique flavor. Nothing feels artificial. Nothing feels staged. Even the parts of the film that rely on digital graphics, like social media notifications, are designed with such care that they feel like a natural extension of the world rather than an interruption. The visual effects work in Chef is like the perfect seasoning, not overpowering, not attention-seeking, but essential in elevating the overall experience. The practical filming of food, the real-world locations, the natural lighting, and the minimal but effective use of digital elements create a visual atmosphere that feels alive, immersive, and deliciously real. The visuals pull the audience into the tight space of the truck, the vibrant streets of each city, and the sizzling intensity of the kitchen without ever needing digital scaffolding to hold them up. The result is a film that feels immediate, personal, and rich with visual flavor. A world you can see, hear, and almost taste. The set design and locations in Chef 2014 are not just backdrops, they are living, breathing spaces that give the film its soul. Every kitchen, street, food truck, and city corner feels authentic, layered, and packed with the kind of small, unpolished details that make the world feel absolutely real. The production design doesn't try to impress with grandeur. Instead, it immerses the audience in Carl Casper's journey by surrounding him with spaces that mirror his emotional state and creative evolution. The environments Carl moves through, whether cramped restaurant kitchens, chaotic streets, or sunlit food truck stops, are carefully chosen to visually support his story, and each setting feels as though it has its own heartbeat. The film opens in the high-end kitchen of the Los Angeles restaurant where Carl works, and the set design here is quietly suffocating. The kitchen is sleek, clean, and organized to the point of sterility. Stainless steel surfaces gleam under cold lighting. The stations are tightly structured, and there's an air of strict control in every corner. This is a space that values precision and tradition over creativity, and you can feel that through the props and layout. The utensils are all in their perfect places, the white plates wait like blank canvases, and there's little room for mess or improvisation. The design of this kitchen visually captures Carl's frustration without needing a word of explanation. It's a cage of professionalism where risk-taking is shut down. The way the kitchen looks and feels reinforces the film's early themes of creative suppression. When Carl leaves this world behind, the locations immediately open up, not just physically but emotionally. Miami, New Orleans, and Austin aren't just pretty postcard cities in this film. They are fully integrated parts of Carl's rebirth. The streets of Miami explode with color and life. The buildings are painted in bright pastels, street vendors line the sidewalks, and palm trees wave lazily in the background. This is where Carl reconnects with his roots, and the city's energy matches his excitement as he begins to dream about the food truck. The props here, the rustic grills, the stacks of Cuban bread, the simple wooden tables, are far from the polished surfaces of his old kitchen. And this roughness is exactly what makes the space feel alive and inviting. The food truck itself is perhaps the film's most important set, and its design is a triumph of storytelling through space. Inside the truck, everything is cramped but functional, messy but alive. The walls are lined with simple hooks holding pans and utensils, sauces are squeezed into plastic bottles, and baskets of bread are casually stacked in the corners. The truck isn't shiny or high-tech, it's worn a little beat up and brimming with character. This is not the pristine workspace Carl left behind. It's a kitchen that he owns, that he controls, and that reflects his renewed spirit. The props inside the truck, the sizzling grill, the grease-streaked counter, the handwritten menu, are all perfectly imperfect. The tightness of the space forces Carl, Percy, and Martin to work in harmony, which visually reinforces the theme of connection and collaboration. The cities Carl travels through each bring their own visual flavor. In New Orleans, the streets hum with brass bands and vibrant murals. The film doesn't dress these locations up. They are presented with their natural texture, their chipped paint, their uneven sidewalks, and their crowded, buzzing corners. The choice to film on location, using real streets and actual food scenes, gives the film a documentary-like authenticity that can't be faked on a soundstage. The background details, the plastic chairs, the creaking food carts, the hand-painted signs, all feel like they were captured as they were, which makes the story feel firmly planted in the real world. Austin brings a different energy with its funky, indie vibe. The settings here are casual, creative, and full of charm. Outdoor spaces, live music setups, and street-side diners capture the city's relaxed spirit. Even the truck's resting spots, where Carl parks to serve lines of eager customers, are visually interesting because they feel like real community spaces, not staged movie sets. The way the truck integrates into these local spots makes Carl's journey feel like a genuine road trip where the scenery keeps changing but the truck always feels like home. The props throughout the film also deserve attention because they are meticulously selected to deepen the sense of place. From the cooking tools Carl uses to the food containers Percy handles to the portable signs Martin sets up, each object feels functional, used, and real. There are no shiny, untouched props here. The knives have nicks, the pans have burn marks, and the utensils have that lived-in feel that only comes from real kitchens. Even the small touches, the condiments arranged in grab-ready squeeze bottles, the paper napkins, the simple food baskets, show that the filmmakers cared about building a believable culinary world from the ground up. The homes and personal spaces in the film are also thoughtfully designed. Carl's apartment is modest and practical, not filled with exaggerated symbols of either success or failure. It feels like a working man's space, with just enough detail to suggest his single life without overstating it. His ex-wife's house, by contrast, is warm, well-lit, and family-oriented, creating a visual contrast between the life Carl had and the one he's now trying to rebuild. These environments subtly support the emotional layers of the story without needing to push them overtly. Even the digital spaces, the way text messages, tweets, and social media videos pop up in the real world, are handled with sleek, minimal design. They hover lightly over the scenes, adding a layer of modern connectivity, without ever looking artificial or clunky. These clean graphics are technically props in the film's digital toolkit, and they blend effortlessly with the physical locations, making the social media world feel just as tangible as the sizzling kitchens. What makes the set design and locations in Chef so compelling is how they shift and evolve with Carl's journey. The sterile, boxed-in spaces of the beginning slowly give way to vibrant, open-air settings filled with community, music, and flavor. The transition from cold kitchens to steamy food trucks to colorful streets perfectly mirrors Carl's transformation from trapped to free, from frustrated to fulfilled. The spaces themselves tell the story as much as the characters do, and the attention to detail in each prop, each corner, each background crowd makes the world of Chef feel like a place you could step into, a place you could walk through, and most importantly, a place where you could order the best Cuban sandwich you've ever tasted. The dialogue and script in Chef, 2014, carry a flavor all their own. Every word, every sentence feels like it was written to be spoken in the middle of life's heat and noise. Not carefully crafted to sound perfect, but alive with real-world energy. The script isn't just there to push the plot forward. It's the heartbeat of the film, pulsing through kitchen banter, social media spats, father-son bonding, and the kind of brutally honest moments that make characters leap off the screen. The conversations feel unscripted in the best way, raw and immediate, yet sharp enough to leave a lasting taste. There's a rhythm to the way these characters talk, whether they're shouting over sizzling grills or quietly sharing a moment in the cramped food truck. One of the film's strongest elements is its ability to swing naturally between humor, tension, and heartfelt connection without the dialogue ever feeling forced. Carl's kitchen exchanges with his crew come fast, full of cursing, sharp wit, and that chaotic, overlapping style that sounds exactly like what you'd hear in a real kitchen under pressure. When Carl butts heads with Riva, his boss, the dialogue becomes a tug-of-war, layered with frustration, sarcasm, and years of creative suffocation bubbling to the surface. There's no need for grand speeches here. The script captures the power of short, cutting exchanges that say more in a few words than a long monologue ever could. The script finds its most electric spark in the now iconic Twitter fight that spins Carl's life out of control. It's modern, snappy, and completely believable. Carl's angry tweet at the critic is a perfect storm of pride, rage, and pure emotion packed into a single message. The way this digital argument escalates in just a few words shows how the script understands the speed and danger of social media, but also how authentic it feels to get swept up in that heat-of-the-moment response. The beauty of these Twitter exchanges is that they sound exactly like something anyone could write in real life, which makes the fallout hit even harder. The film is sprinkled with moments of sharp humor that feel entirely natural to the characters. Martin, Carl's loyal friend and co-chef, is a constant source of lighthearted, effortless comedy. His lines aren't scripted to be punchlines. They're quick, real, and perfectly timed to keep the mood buoyant. His casual jabs, his supportive quips, and his street-smart observations give the film a grounded humor that never feels like it's trying too hard. Even Percy's dialogue as Carl's son is handled with care. He's not written as the overly clever kid who talks like a 30-year-old. Percy's words carry the awkwardness, honesty, and quiet yearning of a real child trying to reconnect with his dad. His questions, his frustrations, and his bursts of excitement all come through in a way that feels entirely genuine. One of the most touching aspects of the script is how it lets the emotional weight build slowly. The conversations between Carl and Percy aren't stuffed with big life lessons or cheesy inspirational lines. Instead, they unfold in the small, sometimes clumsy exchanges that happen while serving customers, cleaning the truck, or sharing a late-night grilled cheese. The emotional core comes not from what's said, but how it's said, simple, unguarded, and often in passing. When Carl finally tells Percy how proud he is of him, the words land like a soft punch to the heart because they're delivered without fanfare, almost like Carl didn't know he needed to say it until it slipped out. The script allows these understated moments to hit harder because they feel like genuine breakthroughs. The script also does an excellent job of showing Carl's evolution through his dialogue. In the beginning, Carl speaks like a man trapped, guarded, defensive, quick to lash out. As he finds his freedom on the road, his words loosen up, his conversations breathe, and his humor returns. His exchanges with his ex-wife shift from tense and clipped to relaxed and teasing. His tone with Percy softens from distracted to fully present. The script subtly maps this transformation not through big declarations, but through the changing texture of everyday talk. There are standout lines that linger after the credits roll, not because they're overly poetic, but because they're true. When Carl finally faces the critic in person, the conversation isn't about revenge, it's about honesty and passion. The words exchanged in that moment cut deep, because they come from a place of vulnerability rather than aggression. The critic's unexpected appreciation for Carl's food truck work is delivered in a few simple lines, but the weight of those words reshapes Carl's entire relationship with his craft. Even the script's treatment of social media carries its own quiet brilliance. Percy's casual explanations to his father about how Twitter works, how to build an audience, and how to handle digital fame sound exactly like the way a tech-savvy kid would guide a not-so-tech-savvy parent. The dialogue in these moments feels perfectly tuned to that generational gap. The way Percy teaches Carl how to tweet or post videos doesn't feel like a lesson. It feels like a kid genuinely enjoying the chance to lead his dad for once. The banter inside the food truck is another space where the dialogue shines. The rapid-fire exchanges between Carl, Percy, and Martin capture the camaraderie, the pressure, and the joy of working side by side in tight quarters. Their conversations while flipping sandwiches, teasing each other, and navigating the lunch rush have that natural flow of people who know each other's rhythms, who can argue one moment and laugh the next. There's an unspoken closeness that comes through not because the script tells the audience they're friends, but because the way they talk shows it. The script respects silence as much as it does words. It knows when to let a look, a pause, or a moment of quiet say everything. Carl's small, reflective moments, like when he watches Percy sleep in the truck after a long day, are allowed to breathe without needing to be filled with dialogue. The silence in these moments speaks volumes, and the script's restraint is part of what makes the film feel so real. Chef is built on a script that trusts the power of natural conversation. It's funny without trying too hard, emotional without reaching for melodrama, and sharp without feeling polished. It lets characters speak the way people really speak, sometimes fast, sometimes clumsy, sometimes perfectly on point without even meaning to be. The words in this film aren't there to impress, they're there to taste, to savor, to live in. And just like the food Carl makes, the dialogue is crafted with care, seasoned with humor, and served hot off the grill, exactly how life sounds when it's unfolding right in front of you. Chef 2014 is a film that comfortably parks itself in the feel-good, road trip, slice-of-life genre, but what makes it so refreshing is how it quietly sidesteps the usual genre formulas without needing to announce that it's doing so. It doesn't explode the genre or try to flip it on its head. It simply chooses to focus on authenticity over manufactured drama, on small, personal victories instead of grand, life-altering climaxes. The film knows exactly what kind of story it's telling, but it refuses to lean on the predictable crutches that so many similar films rely on. There's no forced romantic subplot, no villain twirling a mustache, no sudden tragic twist that tries to wring out cheap tears. Instead, Chef lets life unfold naturally, and that decision sets it apart in a genre that often relies on heavy-handed emotional beats and overdone redemption arcs. In the classic road trip film formula, you expect big, episodic misadventures at every stop, maybe a few car breakdowns, and probably some dramatic life lessons hammered in by unexpected disasters. Chef skips all that. The road trip here is less about external obstacles, and more about internal rediscovery. The cities, Miami, New Orleans, Austin, are vibrant, but the film doesn't stage big, over-the-top incidents in these locations. Instead, each stop is a chance for Carl to reconnect with his craft, bond with his son, and slowly build his new life one sandwich at a time. There are no wild detours or high-stakes moments that drag the film into artificial suspense. The tension comes from things as simple as learning how to run a food truck, serving a long line of customers, or handling the exploding attention from social media. This low-stakes, high-reward approach is a brilliant subversion because it trusts the audience to care about Carl's journey without needing to dangle a crisis in front of them every 20 minutes. Within the genre of culinary films, there's often a heavy reliance on either the underdog who becomes a legend formula, or the tortured genius who self-destructs in the name of perfection. Chef doesn't walk either of these well-trodden paths. Carl isn't trying to win a competition, open the hottest new restaurant, or dethrone a rival chef. He's not chasing glory. He's chasing joy, freedom, and the lost thrill of creating something he's proud of. There's no cooking showdown, no final dish that needs to impress a skeptical judge in a dramatic close-up. The big win here is Carl serving a perfect sandwich to an everyday customer with a genuine smile. That's where the film sneaks in a quietly rebellious move. It redefines success in this genre as personal satisfaction, not public recognition. The film also plays with the conventions of the father-son bonding story. Normally, in films like this, the estranged father figure and the child are forced together by a series of clunky plot devices, often leading to a dramatic meltdown or a life-threatening moment that forces them to reconnect. Chef completely sidesteps these tropes. The bond between Carl and Percy grows organically through shared work, small conversations, and the real-time experience of running the truck together. There's no big dramatic fallout between them, no scene where Percy storms off after a misunderstanding, no desperate, last-minute apology. Their relationship is built patiently, through grilled cheese sandwiches, shared social media lessons, and cleaning the truck after long, sweaty days. The genre often leans on conflict to push the relationship forward, but Chef leans on companionship instead, trusting that the quiet moments will carry more weight than a staged blowout. The film's sense of humor also flows in a very natural, understated way. It doesn't rely on slapstick, big gags, or cringe-worthy set pieces. The humor comes from character-driven banter, from Martin's laid-back commentary, from Carl's flustered tech confusion, and from the spontaneous, unfiltered moments that pop up in daily life. It's a film that finds comedy in real conversations and awkward silences rather than scripted jokes. It trusts the charm of its characters to carry the humor, and it works because it never feels like the film is pausing to set up a laugh. Even the film's pacing is a quiet rebellion against the typical rhythm of its genre. Road trip films often ramp up with major setbacks, climactic confrontations, and a final moment of emotional catharsis. Chef gently coasts instead. It doesn't try to speed toward a finish line, or build up to a towering emotional crescendo. The story unfolds at a relaxed, steady pace, much like the process of slow cooking the perfect pork shoulder. The journey is the destination here, and the film's refusal to force artificial urgency gives it a refreshing sense of calm that's rare in the genre. The use of social media in the film is also a clever genre twist. In many modern stories, technology is often the villain, the thing that alienates people or creates misunderstandings that spiral into chaos. In Chef, social media is a tool that first brings Carl down, but then becomes the bridge to his rebirth. It's not demonized. It's not a looming threat. It's a reflection of the world Carl has to learn to navigate, and Percy's social media savvy becomes a point of connection between father and son rather than a wedge that drives them apart. This is a smart, modern twist that avoids the usual generational conflict trope where the kid is glued to his phone, and the dad just doesn't get it. Here, the phone becomes a lifeline between them. The film's romance angle, often a heavy ingredient in similar stories, is also treated with refreshing subtlety. There's no dramatic love triangle, no long-suffering love interest begging for Carl's attention, no big romantic obstacle that has to be overcome. Carl's ex-wife is supportive, present, and treated with genuine warmth. The film allows their relationship to exist in a complicated but healthy space. There's mutual respect, shared history, and the possibility of reconnection. But the story never pushes for a grand romantic resolution. It's more interested in Carl fixing his relationship with himself and his son than chasing after a love story. When it comes to the core of the genre, food, the film delivers with overwhelming sincerity. Many food-centered films lean into exaggerated, almost magical portrayals of cooking, with grand music swelling over perfectly plated masterpieces. Chef resists this temptation. It doesn't romanticize cooking as some untouchable art form. It makes it tactile, sweaty, sometimes greasy, and always delicious. The cooking scenes are intense, fast, and sometimes messy, but they are always filmed with respect. There's no pretension here, no towering plates of avant-garde cuisine. The film celebrates street food, sandwiches, simple flavors made with skill and heart. It introduces the fresh idea that the most satisfying meal isn't the fanciest. It's the one made with freedom, shared with people you love, and served with pride. Chef executes its genre with a quiet confidence. It doesn't try to redefine road trip films, father-son stories, or culinary cinema by blowing up the formula. It simply avoids the clichés, sidesteps the easy traps, and trusts that a story about food, family, and freedom can be enough. It balances humor, personal drama, and the pulse of modern life without ever tipping too far into one lane. The film's genius is in its restraint, in its decision to keep things real, keep things moving, and keep things deliciously simple. Chef 2014 may look like a simple story about food, family, and personal growth on the surface, but tucked inside this flavorful journey is a surprisingly rich layer of social and cultural commentary that bubbles throughout the film. It doesn't pound its message with a megaphone or set up grand speeches about society's faults. Instead, it gently stirs these observations into the story like seasoning in a stew, letting them naturally rise to the surface without ever feeling forced or out of place. One of the film's sharpest cultural reflections is its look at the power and danger of social media in the modern world. It dives into how quickly reputations can be built or destroyed with a few taps on a smartphone. Carl's viral meltdown on Twitter isn't just a plot device. It's a smart commentary on the fragile nature of public image in the digital age. The film captures the instant pressure to perform, respond, and defend yourself when a single comment can explode across the internet. Carl's public argument with the critic is a perfect example of how one emotional outburst can suddenly shift the trajectory of a career. The movie doesn't moralize or wag its finger at technology. It simply shows how easily anyone can get swept up in the storm of online attention, for better or worse. It also highlights the generational divide when it comes to navigating digital culture. Carl's struggle to understand social media is not played for cheap laughs. Instead, it paints a very real picture of how older generations often feel left behind by the speed of digital communication. Percy's role as the social media guide flips the usual father-son dynamic. Percy isn't just tagging along for the ride. He's actively shaping Carl's online presence, teaching him the ropes of the new digital landscape. It's a quiet commentary on how parents can sometimes learn from their kids in a world where technology is constantly rewriting the rules of connection. The film also makes subtle but meaningful observations about creative freedom in modern work culture. Carl's clash with Riva, the restaurant owner, is more than just a personal disagreement. It represents the tension between artistic expression and corporate control. The restaurant demands safe, profitable, predictable dishes that satisfy the expectations of paying customers, while Carl burns with the desire to experiment, evolve, and take risks in the kitchen. This tension is something many creative professionals face in real life, where passion often collides with business models and brand management. The film doesn't turn Riva into a villain, but it does spotlight how creative people can feel stifled when their work becomes just another product. Carl's escape into the food truck world is a quiet rebellion against that system, a statement about finding freedom outside of corporate structures and reclaiming creative ownership on his own terms. The choice to focus on street food and local flavors instead of high-end, white tablecloth cuisine also carries a cultural message. The film celebrates food that is accessible, rooted in community, and born from diverse cultural traditions. The Cuban sandwiches, the yucca fries, the beignet, these aren't luxury dishes served in pristine restaurants. They are everyday foods with history, flavor, and cultural pride. By spotlighting these humble, flavorful meals, Chef subtly pushes back against the elitism often associated with fine dining. It honors the richness of street food and the power of bringing people together through simple, soulful cooking. The journey through different cities like Miami, New Orleans, and Austin isn't just about geography. It's a tour of America's cultural tapestry, The film celebrates regional flavors, local music, and the uniqueness of each community without feeling like it's checking boxes. It immerses Carl and the audience in the lively textures of each city, showing how food and culture are deeply intertwined. This love for local traditions becomes a natural part of the story, not a lecture on cultural appreciation, and it invites viewers to find joy in exploring their own cities, neighborhoods, and street corners. There's also a quiet but meaningful look at work-life balance and modern fatherhood. Carl's initial disconnect from Percy isn't because he doesn't love his son. It's because he's trapped in a career that drains his time and energy. The film recognizes the way work can pull parents away from their families, especially when they're chasing success at the cost of personal connection. The story doesn't push a heavy-handed message about parenting, but it gently suggests that showing up, spending time, and building memories matter far more than grand gestures or material success. Carl's journey from distracted, overworked chef to present, engaged father speaks volumes about the pressures of modern adulthood without ever needing to spell it out. Even the dynamic between Carl and his ex-wife is a small but significant piece of social commentary. Hollywood often leans on the trope of bitter exes who battle through custody issues or constantly argue. Chef sidesteps that entirely. Inez is supportive, kind, and genuinely interested in Carl's happiness. Their relationship is complex but healthy, showing that co-parenting and mutual respect are not only possible, but also essential for their son's well-being. This subtle choice pushes against the tired idea that divorced couples must always be at odds, and instead paints a picture of mature, evolving relationships. The film touches lightly on issues of class without diving into overt social critique. By moving from the world of high-end restaurants to the sidewalks of bustling cities, Carl shifts from serving elite critics to everyday people. His food truck serves construction workers, office employees, families, and tourists. People who aren't looking for gourmet presentations but for something that tastes amazing and feels real. The film's admiration for this street-level connection says something about who gets to enjoy great food, and where those culinary experiences are most vibrant. Chef isn't trying to be a social manifesto, but its quiet choices and natural storytelling carry thoughtful commentary on modern life, work, family, technology, and culture. It captures the pulse of a world that moves fast, where reputations can crumble with a tweet, where creative people fight to keep their passion alive, and where sometimes the simplest joys, a perfect sandwich, a road trip with your kid, a shared laugh, carry the most weight. The film's cultural observations are baked into the story, not layered on top, making them feel as organic as the sizzling pork on Carl's grill. It's a story that recognizes the beauty in small things while gently nudging the audience to think about what freedom, success, and connection really look like today. Chef, 2014, is one of those rare films that finds its way under the audience's skin without needing to shout, twist, or force its presence. It speaks in a natural voice. It moves at a comfortable pace, and yet it grips the audience with a surprising amount of emotional pull. The engagement starts from the very first scene, and quietly builds as Carl's journey unfolds. The film doesn't chase big emotional explosions or jaw-dropping plot twists. Instead, it gently weaves itself into the hearts of the viewers through relatable struggles, honest relationships, and the sheer sensory joy of watching delicious food come to life on screen. It taps into universal emotions like creative frustration, the yearning for freedom, the need for connection, and the bittersweet complexities of family life. The audience doesn't just watch Carl's story, they feel it, because so many of his challenges are ones people experience in their own lives. There are moments of genuine laughter that catch viewers off guard, not because they are set up like traditional jokes but because they feel like the funny, awkward, unscripted moments that happen in real life. The chemistry between Carl, Percy, and Martin is playful, loose, and full of the kind of quick banter that makes people feel like they're hanging out with real friends. Martin's laid-back humor, Percy's innocent but sharp observations, and Carl's occasional bursts of flustered sarcasm all land in a way that keeps the audience smiling throughout the journey. These aren't laugh-out-loud comedy punches. They're the kind of smiles that sneak up on you because the humor feels so natural, so unforced, and so connected to who these characters really are. There's a quiet but steady emotional pulse running through the film, especially in the father-son relationship. The small, intimate moments between Carl and Percy are where the film truly grips the audience's heart. When Carl teaches Percy how to cook, when they share meals together, when Percy proudly hands out the food truck's sandwiches. These moments carry a soft but powerful emotional weight. They don't need dramatic music or teary speeches. The simplicity of these connections hits home because they feel so real. The audience feels Percy's joy when his dad praises him, feels Carl's guilt when he realizes how distant he's been, and feels their growing bond with every shared day in the food truck. These aren't staged movie moments. They feel like memories that viewers can almost believe they've lived themselves. The film's engagement is also sensory on a whole different level. The food and chef isn't just there to decorate the screen. It practically reaches out to the audience. The sizzling sounds, the visual texture of the melting cheese, the perfect crackle of toasted bread. These details create a mouth-watering experience that pulls viewers into the kitchen alongside Carl. There are few films that make people want to immediately stand up, walk to the kitchen, and start cooking. Chef does that effortlessly. The audience isn't just engaged emotionally or narratively, they're engaged physically, craving the flavors they see on screen. The food is shot with so much love and care that it becomes a central emotional thread of the story, a character in its own right that connects Carl, Percy, Martin, and the customers they serve. This kind of sensory engagement is rare, and gives the film an irresistible, immersive pull. What's especially engaging about Chef is how it invites the audience to reflect without pushing them into heavy contemplation. People walk away thinking about their own work-life balance, their own family connections, their own creative passions. It raises questions like, am I doing what I love, or am I just going through the motions? Am I showing up for the people who matter? Am I letting small moments pass me by while I chase something that isn't making me happy? These reflections don't come from grand speeches or obvious life lessons. They creep in as the audience watches Carl's choices, his frustrations, his quiet victories. The film doesn't tell viewers what to think. It simply lays the journey out, and lets each person find their own connections to it. The road trip structure also hooks the audience because it creates a sense of curiosity and anticipation without needing big set pieces or cliffhangers. Each city Carl visits brings a new flavor, a new rhythm, and a new emotional beat. The changing locations keep things visually and emotionally fresh, and the audience stays engaged, wondering what the next stop will bring. Not because there's a looming crisis, but because the journey feels alive and inviting. It's a story that people want to stay on board with, not because they're chasing answers but because they're enjoying the ride. The film's handling of social media also taps into something very contemporary that resonates with audiences. The viral meltdown, the growing online fan base, the way Percy navigates Twitter and Vine. It all feels instantly recognizable to anyone living in the digital age. The way the film weaves this into the story invites the audience to think about how quickly online reputations can rise and fall, how social media can build bridges or burn them, and how digital tools can bring people closer if used with intention. For younger audiences, this part of the film especially clicks, because it speaks directly to how connected, exposed, and immediate the online world has become. One of the most beautiful things about the film's audience engagement is how it invites repeat viewings. It's not the kind of story where you watch once just to see what happens. It's the kind of film people come back to because it feels good to revisit those characters, that food, that journey. Every rewatch peels back another layer. A deeper appreciation for the father-son bond. A new detail in the way the food is prepared. A sharper ear for the witty exchanges between Carl and Martin. The film plants itself in the viewer's emotional landscape in a way that lingers long after the credits roll. Chef doesn't shock, it doesn't explode. It doesn't pull tears with forced tragedy, but it does something far more lasting. It welcomes the audience into its warm, flavorful, slightly messy world and lets them stay there, feel comfortable there, and find joy, humor, and reflection in the small, meaningful moments. It's a film that stays with people, not because it demands attention but because it quietly earns it, scene by scene, laugh by laugh, sandwich by sandwich. When stacking Chef, 2014, alongside other films in the road trip, culinary, and feel-good family drama categories, it quickly becomes clear that this movie walks its own path with an effortless charm that quietly sets it apart. Most films that orbit the world of cooking tend to either magnify the competitive pressure, dive into obsessive perfectionism, or craft a high-stakes rivalry that drives the plot forward. Films like Burnt and Julia often center their stories around characters who are chasing Michelin stars, battling the demons of their own ego, or climbing the brutal hierarchy of elite kitchens. Chef completely sidesteps that lane. It's not about winning awards, becoming the best, or out-cooking someone else. It's about rediscovering the simple, honest joy of making food you love. Where Burnt burns itself with high-octane kitchen stress and self-destruction, Chef invites the audience to savor the laid-back sizzle of a food truck on a summer afternoon. When compared to traditional road trip movies, Chef feels strikingly different in the way it handles pace and stakes. Road trip films like Little Miss Sunshine or The Peanut Butter Falcon typically rely on escalating detours, personal breakdowns, or unexpected disasters to keep the audience on edge. These films build their emotional arcs around a string of misadventures, sometimes hilarious, sometimes heartbreaking. Chef chooses a different route. The journey here doesn't hinge on flat tires, missed deadlines, or ticking clocks. It's smooth, almost therapeutic, like cruising down an open highway with good music and no real rush to get anywhere. The roadblocks Carl faces are not the kind that bring the trip to a screeching halt. They are the kind that slowly melt away as he reconnects with his passion, his family, and his love for cooking. The relaxed tempo is what gives Chef its distinct flavor in the road trip genre. Looking at Jon Favreau's own filmography, Chef stands as a complete departure from his big-budget, effects-driven projects like Iron Man and The Jungle Book. Favreau is known for his blockbuster skills, shaping superhero sagas and CGI-heavy epics that light up the screen with spectacle. But Chef is his small, personal, almost handcrafted project. It strips away all the Hollywood machinery and focuses purely on story, character, and the tactile experience of cooking. There are no explosions, no digital jungles, no flying suits. It's just food, family, and a road trip in a food truck. This shift from spectacle to sincerity is what makes Chef a fascinating chapter in Favreau's career. It feels like he put the giant set pieces aside and just wanted to tell a story that lives close to the ground. A story that's all heart and no fireworks. It's the film where Favreau stepped out from behind the blockbuster curtain and delivered something deeply personal. In the world of father-son relationship films, Chef holds its own by avoiding the usual pitfalls. Films like The Pursuit of Happiness or Kramer vs. Kramer place enormous emotional weight on the father-son dynamic, often dragging the viewer through gut-wrenching custody battles or near-impossible struggles for survival. Chef doesn't swing that hard. It's lighter, warmer, and more focused on the quiet ways a relationship can rebuild itself through shared experiences, not grand gestures. There's no courtroom showdown, no life-or-death moment that brings Carl and Percy back together. Instead, they reconnect over shared meals, burnt sandwiches, and social media lessons. Chef proves that the small, accumulated moments can carry as much emotional power as the big dramatic ones. In comparison to other films that explore food as a central theme, Chef lands much closer to Jiro Dreams of Sushi or Ratatouille in spirit. It's less about the power and prestige of the culinary world, and more about the joy of the craft itself. It shares Ratatouille's love for the creative process, but with the added layers of real-world pressure, modern technology, and a grounded family dynamic. Unlike Jiro Dreams of Sushi, which presents food as an almost sacred art form achieved through lifelong discipline, Chef is messy, spontaneous, and full of trial and error. It celebrates imperfection and the idea that food is not just about technique, but about connection and expression. When standing next to other independent, character-driven comedies, Chef also manages to carve out a unique space. Films like The Way Back or Begin Again share a similar vibe of self-discovery, personal growth, and fresh starts, but Chef distinguishes itself by wrapping all of that in the sensory delight of food culture. The kitchen scenes, the sizzling grills, the tactile details of prepping sandwiches, all these elevate the story from being just another indie road movie to something with its own irresistible texture. Where Begin Again uses music as its emotional backbone, Chef uses food with the same level of intimacy and passion. It's also worth noting that Chef doesn't overindulge in familiar indie film tropes. There's no quirky narrator, no excessively stylized montage sequences, no hipster aesthetic cranked up to 11. The storytelling is straightforward, the humor is natural, And the emotional beats are allowed to land without being drenched in irony or detached coolness. It's a sincere film in a genre that often leans on being self-consciously clever. Compared to other road trip food films like The 100-Foot Journey or Eat, Pray, Love, Chef keeps things tight and focused. It doesn't sprawl across continents in search of life's big answers or cultural enlightenment. It stays on the streets of American cities, in the food trucks and kitchens where real people work and eat. It feels local, intimate, and grounded, and that simplicity gives it a unique kind of power. Where Eat, Pray, Love takes the journey into grand spiritual territory, Chef keeps its feet firmly planted on the pavement, reminding the audience that sometimes the most life-changing journeys happen in small, unglamorous spaces. Chef stands apart because it doesn't try to compete with the flashier entries in its various genres. It doesn't scream for attention, it quietly earns it. Whether stacked against other food films, road trips, family dramas, or even within Jon Favreau's own body of work, Chef holds its own by focusing on the real, the tangible, and the heartfelt. It's a film that invites comparison but refuses to play by the expected rules, choosing instead to build its own flavorful, satisfying lane. Chef 2014 might look like a straightforward, feel-good movie about cooking and family, but woven carefully through its warm, flavorful layers are thoughtful symbols and subtle metaphors that quietly deepen the story. The film doesn't parade its symbolism in front of the audience. It tucks it into the small moments, into the ingredients, into the sizzle of the grill, and into the road trip's winding path, waiting for viewers to pick up on these quiet signals as they enjoy the ride. One of the most delicious metaphors in the film is the food truck itself. On the surface, it's Carl's new business venture, but underneath, it's the purest symbol of freedom, creativity, and a return to authenticity. In the restrictive walls of the restaurant, Carl is suffocated, told what to cook, how to cook it, and who he should be as a chef. The moment he steps into the food truck, he takes the wheel in every sense. The truck is mobility, choice, escape from the corporate kitchen. It's his second chance at living life on his own terms. The truck's constant movement from city to city reflects Carl's personal growth, his willingness to keep moving forward, to keep chasing joy rather than safety. The freedom of the truck is not just about geography. It's about the emotional and creative freedom he's been starving for. The Cuban sandwich Carl perfects and serves throughout the journey is more than just a recipe. It becomes a symbol of simplicity, craftsmanship, and cultural connection. This isn't the kind of dish a high-end critic would glorify, but it's the exact food that brings Carl back to life. The sandwich represents the power of going back to basics, the beauty of making something accessible, delicious, and real. It stands in contrast to the elaborate but hollow dishes Carl was forced to cook in his old kitchen. Every time he hands out a Cuban sandwich from his food truck window, it's like he's serving a piece of his reclaimed passion directly to the people who actually appreciate it. It's the tangible result of his decision to cook for himself, not for critics. Social media becomes a recurring visual and thematic thread that carries its own layered symbolism. At first, Carl's phone is a source of humiliation and public disaster, a symbol of his loss of control. His emotional tweet spirals into a digital storm that nearly crushes his career. But as the story progresses, social media shifts from being Carl's downfall to becoming his bridge to a new life. Through Percy's videos and tweets, Carl's story gains traction, but this time on his own terms. The phone, which once represented Carl's disconnect from the modern world, slowly transforms into a symbol of connection, storytelling, and generational bonding. It's not the villain, it's the tool he learns to use, thanks to his son. The phone is a visual reminder that embracing change doesn't have to mean losing yourself. The sequence where Carl and Percy prepare a simple grilled cheese sandwich is one of the film's most symbolic moments. Carl doesn't just slap cheese between bread. He treats it like a serious dish, carefully toasting the bread, layering the cheese, and explaining the technique. This moment is a quiet metaphor for how Carl approaches his relationship with Percy. He's learning to be present, to care, to put thought into even the smallest interactions. The sandwich itself becomes a symbol of attention, of taking time to do things right, even when they seem simple. Carl's meticulous cooking is a stand-in for how he's slowly rebuilding his connection with his son, with patience and purpose. Music is another layered metaphor in the film. The soundtrack pulses through every scene, from the Cuban rhythms in Miami to the brass-filled streets of New Orleans. The choice of songs and their placement aren't just about creating mood. They mirror Carl's emotional journey. The music's changing energy from city to city reflects Carl's gradual transformation from feeling trapped to finding his rhythm again. The scenes where Carl, Percy, and Martin blast music from the truck while serving customers are not just about having fun. They symbolize the harmony that's been missing in Carl's life. The truck becomes their shared stage, their moving kitchen, and the soundtrack becomes the heartbeat of their rediscovered joy. The road trip itself, stretching from Miami to Los Angeles, is a classic metaphor for self-discovery and rebirth. Each city Carl visits is like a step along his personal path back to himself. Miami, where the truck is born, is the starting point, a place full of heat, history, and family roots. New Orleans brings flavor, celebration, and spontaneity, a city that encourages Carl to loosen up and enjoy the process. Austin offers a final burst of energy, creativity, and new beginnings. The cities aren't just pit stops. They're markers of Carl's internal growth, each one peeling back a layer of frustration, fear, and creative block. Even the food prep sequences, filmed in loving detail, carry symbolic weight. The way Carl handles his knives, the careful arrangement of ingredients, the rhythm of his cooking, these aren't just aesthetic choices. They represent Carl's need for control, his need to create order and beauty in a life that's often felt chaotic. As the film progresses, his cooking becomes more fluid, less about perfection, and more about connection. This shift in his kitchen movements mirrors his personal shift toward embracing the messiness and unpredictability of life. The critic, Ramsey Michel, also carries symbolic weight. He isn't just Carl's professional obstacle. He represents the external voices that can drown out personal passion. At first, Ramsey's scathing review destroys Carl's confidence, but as the story unfolds, the critic becomes a mirror that forces Carl to confront his own compromises. The eventual resolution between them isn't a triumphant revenge. It's a quiet, mutual recognition that both of them are searching for authenticity in their own ways. Ramsey becomes less of a villain and more of a symbol of the push that Carl needed to rediscover his own voice. Even the recurring motif of fatherhood weaves through small, symbolic gestures. Carl giving Percy small responsibilities on the truck, trusting him to handle money, letting him post on social media. These aren't random tasks. They're symbolic of Carl learning to let go, to trust, to share his life and his work with his son. Every small decision Carl makes on that truck is a step away from isolation, and a step toward building something together. Chef fills its scenes with these quiet, flavorful symbols and metaphors without ever shouting about them. The food truck is freedom, the sandwich is simplicity, the phone is connection, the road is rebirth, the cooking is care, the music is rhythm, and the critic is self-awareness. The film layers all these elements in a way that enhances the story's emotional impact, offering a deeper, richer experience for those who want to look beyond the surface. It's a story that serves more than just delicious food. It serves thoughtful visual and thematic cues that quietly season the entire journey. Chef 2014 doesn't belong to a franchise, it doesn't build on an existing cinematic universe, and it doesn't pull its story from any major historical event or time period. It lives entirely on its own, standing apart from the Hollywood trend of sequels, spin-offs, or interconnected sagas. But what makes Chef fascinating is that even without being part of a franchise, it carries a kind of personal historical weight, especially when viewed in the context of Jon Favreau's career and the Hollywood landscape at the time. In fact, some fans have playfully dubbed Chef as Favreau's real-life breakaway story, a meta-narrative that mirrors his own journey as a filmmaker navigating the pressures of big studio films and finding his creative freedom in a smaller, more personal project. Coming off the huge success of Iron Man and Iron Man 2, Favreau had firmly cemented himself as a major Hollywood director with a reputation for blockbuster storytelling. But somewhere along the way, the machinery of big-budget franchises seemed to pull him further from the raw, hands-on creativity that originally inspired him. Chef isn't part of a cinematic franchise, but in a very real way, it is Favreau's commentary on stepping away from the assembly line of studio expectations. The film, though fictional, almost feels like a personal diary of someone walking out of the towering studio kitchen to cook in his own food truck. The parallels are striking. Favreau plays Carl Casper, a chef suffocated by creative control, tired of cooking the same predictable menu for the same critical eyes, looking for an escape. In real life, Favreau stepped away from the towering spectacle of the Marvel machine and made Chef, a low-budget, deeply personal film about rediscovering joy through passion projects. The historical context here isn't tied to world events. It's tied to Favreau's timeline as a creator. The film also lands at a time when social media was beginning to fully dominate both personal and professional spaces. The historical moment of Chef's release in 2014 is significant because it captures that sharp cultural pivot where platforms like Twitter, Vine, and Instagram were rapidly reshaping how reputations were built, how marketing was done, and how personal moments became public currency. Chef taps into that shift with laser precision. It doesn't treat social media like a gimmick or a background noise. It places it front and center as a powerful force that can dismantle or elevate careers in real time. The movie was released right when the world was realizing that a single tweet could spark viral fame or disaster. This cultural timing gives the film a kind of social relevance that places it squarely in the historical context of the digital revolution. It's almost like a time capsule of that moment when food trucks were exploding in popularity and smartphones were transforming both communication and consumption. Another layer of context comes from the culinary world itself. Around the time Chef was released, the global food scene was seeing a major cultural shift. There was a growing rebellion against the rigidity of fine dining and a celebration of street food, local vendors, and culinary authenticity. Shows like Chef's Table and Street Food would later popularize this shift, but Chef caught it right in the wave's early swell. The film's embrace of street food wasn't just a plot choice. It was a reflection of real-world culinary movements that were elevating food trucks and pop-up kitchens into legitimate sources of culinary artistry. The cultural obsession with food was reaching new heights, and Chef arrived at the perfect moment to ride that wave, celebrating the raw, unpretentious beauty of cooking for the people rather than the critics. From a filmmaking perspective, Chef sits in an interesting historical pocket as well. This was a period when indie films were starting to draw mainstream attention not because they were flashy, but because audiences were craving something more personal, more grounded, and more human amid the explosion of superhero franchises and CGI-heavy blockbusters. Chef emerged as a kind of counter-programming to the summer of sequels and big-budget spectacles. A reminder that stories about people, relationships, and grilled cheese sandwiches could still captivate audiences without needing an army of visual effects. It stands alongside films like The Way, Way Back and Begin Again, which also caught the audience's attention with their smaller scales, authentic characters, and heartfelt storytelling. There's also a subtle place for Chef in the timeline of Favreau's evolving filmography. This was the movie that reconnected him to the basics of storytelling and creative control. Without Chef, the next chapter of his career, leading him back to projects like The Jungle Book and later The Mandalorian, might have taken a different path. The simplicity, honesty, and hands-on craftsmanship of Chef seems to have recalibrated his artistic compass, a kind of creative pit stop that recharged his passion for filmmaking before he returned to the epic scale of his later projects. In this sense, Chef holds historical significance not in the global timeline, but in the personal arc of one of Hollywood's most versatile directors. When viewed against the backdrop of the film industry's obsession with sequels and cinematic universes, Chef feels like an intentional step away from franchise fever. It doesn't build a world that demands follow-ups. It doesn't leave dangling storylines to lure viewers back. It tells one self-contained story, savoring the beauty of a complete journey that begins and ends with Carl's rediscovery of himself. In an era where nearly every successful film was built to launch a trilogy, Chef stood proudly as a singular, satisfying narrative with no need for expansions or spin-offs. So while Chef doesn't belong to a franchise or recount a historical era, it still holds a meaningful place within the personal, cultural, and cinematic context of its time. It's a film that captured a creative crossroads for its director, rode the rising wave of culinary culture, and spoke directly to the digital heartbeat of its generation. It didn't need to be part of a larger story. It was the story that mattered at that very moment. Chef, 2014. wasn't working with the kind of towering, blockbuster budget that director Jon Favreau had gotten used to when he was commanding the giant sets of Iron Man, or juggling the visual spectacle of big studio productions. This film was made on a modest budget of around $11 million. A figure that's practically pocket change compared to the superhero epics and CGI-heavy adventures that typically balloon into the hundreds of millions. But here's where things get really interesting. The production quality of Chef absolutely maximizes every dollar it spent. The film doesn't need sweeping action sequences, digital cities, or elaborate visual effects to feel rich, polished, and thoroughly engaging. Instead, the quality shines through the tactile realism of the food preparation scenes, the vibrant street locations, and the warm, inviting cinematography that pulls audiences into Carl's flavorful world without relying on expensive tricks. The tight budget almost seems to work in the film's favor because it forces the story to stay grounded, intimate, and personal. It focuses on real places, real food, and real people, and that makes it all the more immersive. From a box office perspective, Chef ended up cooking up quite a satisfying success story. It pulled in about $50 million globally, which when stacked against its $11 million budget, is a solid win. This wasn't a film expected to break records or draw superhero-sized crowds. It was a mid-sized indie comedy with a heartfelt story, a small but impressive cast, and a ton of delicious on-screen cooking. The box office result wasn't built on a flashy marketing campaign or a flood of merchandise. It was powered almost entirely by word of mouth, good reviews, and audiences who simply fell in love with the film and told their friends to go see it. Marketing for Chef was simple and fitting. It didn't rely on the heavy studio push or giant advertising budgets. Instead, it leaned into social media, a perfect, almost poetic choice given the film's own storyline about the power of digital platforms. Fans shared trailers, posted about their favorite scenes, and swapped food truck fantasies across Twitter and Facebook. The marketing itself became a natural extension of the film's message. It wasn't a screaming billboard or an aggressive studio push. It was a slow, steady buzz that grew as more people connected with the story. The digital age was a huge player in the film's real-world success, just as it was in Carl Casper's on-screen journey. Audience reception played a massive role in Chef's financial performance. Critics loved it, but more importantly, everyday moviegoers embraced it. They connected with its warmth, its humor, its mouth-watering visuals, and its universal story about chasing creative freedom and repairing family bonds. This wasn't a film that relied on big opening weekend numbers. It was a film that quietly built momentum over time. People saw it, loved it, and went back for seconds. Some even hunted down Cuban sandwiches right after leaving the theater. It created that rare kind of post-viewing craving that translated into repeat ticket sales, and a cult-like affection that continued to grow even after it left theaters. The film's production choices, from the use of real food trucks to shooting in actual street locations, helped keep costs down while maintaining a sense of authenticity that more expensive productions sometimes miss. The performances didn't require elaborate sets or over-the-top costumes to land. The emotional punch of the film came from natural chemistry, relatable dialogue, and simple, heartfelt moments, none of which required a blockbuster-sized budget to execute. In the grand scheme of box office and production economics, Chef stands as a perfect example of how a film doesn't need to spend hundreds of millions to be successful, or to deliver a rich, satisfying experience. It shows that smart budgeting, sharp storytelling, and honest performances can carry a film all the way to financial success without the need for franchise branding or explosive marketing. The film's lean production budget didn't hold it back. In fact, it gave the story the breathing room to be exactly what it needed to be: focused, flavorful, and real. The story about Carl finding his creative freedom mirrors the film's own financial journey, breaking away from big studio expectations and proving that sometimes all you need is the right ingredients, a little bit of spice, and an audience that's hungry for something real. Chef is available on a variety of streaming platforms, giving audiences plenty of options to dive into this flavorful journey. It's currently part of the libraries on some popular subscription-based services. This means if you already have access to these platforms, you can simply search the movie and start watching without needing to make an additional purchase. This is often the smoothest way to enjoy the film with uninterrupted playback and high-quality visuals, fully savoring the vibrant colors of the food, the lively city streets, and the detailed cooking scenes that are so essential to the movie's charm. For those looking for a budget-friendly option, Chef is also available on free, ad-supported streaming platforms. Watching it here is like catching it on a traditional TV channel. You'll experience a few ad breaks along the way, but you get to watch the full movie without spending a dime. It's a great choice if you don't mind occasional pauses and just want to experience the story without any upfront cost. If you prefer more control over your viewing schedule, renting the movie digitally is a convenient option. Major digital stores offer rental services where you can stream Chef in high definition for a reasonable price. Typically, you'll have a generous window, around 30 days to start watching and 48 hours to finish once you hit play. This works perfectly if you're planning a movie night, or just want the flexibility to watch it at your own pace. Renting in HD is especially satisfying for a film like Chef, where the crispy sandwiches, sizzling skillets, and colorful ingredients truly pop on screen. For viewers who fall in love with the film and know they'll want to revisit it, purchasing a digital copy is an excellent route. Once bought, the film is yours to keep and you can watch it as many times as you like, anytime you crave that perfect blend of comedy, family, and mouth-watering culinary adventures. Having permanent access is ideal for those who enjoy rewatching feel-good films, or for anyone who loves to build their own digital library. Wherever you choose to watch it, Chef delivers a sensory-rich experience that shines on a good screen with decent sound. Watching it with friends or family over a shared meal can make it even more enjoyable. It's the kind of movie that stirs up conversation, inspires spontaneous cooking, and leaves you with a smile and maybe a serious craving for Cuban sandwiches. Whether you stream it, rent it, or own it, the story unfolds with a satisfying rhythm that makes it a delightful watch from start to finish.